rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Oh, my goodness. There's been a lot of stuff kind of roaming around on, the socials and news, although the news is kind of sort of bland. I mean, not really exciting, as, that's typical. But as far as like the social media part of it goes, I got to tell you, these leftist morons who are just harping upon this 14th Amendment, Section 3. I know I've been going on about it, but I did a little digging. I actually read the entire opinion from Trump v. Anderson, and I think I found a couple of nuggets and tidbits for you. I'm going to get into that in just a few minutes. Also, too, there was a post that Elon Musk did on X that had a montage of Reagan quotes that he made an appearance prior to him becoming president in it's called the Johnny Carson Show. He was the late night king back in the 70s and 80s, before Jay Leno took over for him. And it's really kind of interesting to listen to what Ronald Reagan had to say pre-presidency. The clips are from an appearance in 1975, just to give you an idea. And to listen to those and then look at today. And I got a few of those clips up on deck for you tonight. We're going to try and get to those. And I'll discuss a little bit about them. Now, you all know that one of my favorite presidents, probably my favorite president, I'll just say, because I can relate. I was alive when he was the president, which of course was Ronald Reagan. And I find him fascinating. He's a very interesting man, even though he was, a Hollywood actor. All right. And anyway, he just, we don't have those kinds of presidents around. There's a reason why he was called the Great Communicator. And, anyway, sorry, fanboying a little bit here, but we really should go back and listen, because there's a lot of things that are going on that have happened in the last 10 years that are very similar to what was going on prior to Ronald Reagan going into office the first time in 1980. And so that's part of the reason why I want to kind of bring this stuff to you. I also have a couple of other articles with regards to homelessness being Joe Biden's fault, and as well as a couple of other just random articles that I'll show you here in just a minute. But before we get into that, we have to go for the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance is going to be recited by none other than 3 Chevy over on Rumble. And speaking of Rumble, I just got to say hat tip to Braden McGroin once again. If you missed last night, Braden was in a very giving mood, and there's a lot of pink in my chat. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with what the pink means, the pink background behind people's names in Rumble means that they have become a monthly supporter. Okay. And Braden McGroin was gifting people monthly supporter things last night. So he got, I think, about 6 or 7, maybe 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And he hit them all up and gave them a monthly supporter gift. Of course, that's to me ultimately, but he gave the gift to others to turn around and support me. So that's pretty much what's going on as far as that goes. So yeah, like I said, there's a lot of pink in my chat, and I am very grateful for all of that. All right, let's go ahead and get things kicked off here with tonight's Pledge of Allegiance. So if you are of mind, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, and otherwise place your hand over your heart, and let's follow along with 3 Chevy in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And of course, thank you, 3 Chevy, for submitting that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself, whether it's audio or video, doesn't matter. I don't play the video part. I'll strip out the audio portion of it, so you really don't have to make it too fancy. And then basically take that file that's generated, attach it to an email, and send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. All right, and tonight's... Ooh, I got to get my script up here. All right, and tonight's headline or promo is... the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government, as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, IOTC.AmericanPerspective.online to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is IOTC.AmericanPerspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's IOTC.AmericanPerspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, all you need to do is go to Constitution.AmericanPerspective.online. Now check this thing out. It is 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. They are not skimping on the materials here. There is no glue in this binding. They stitched it all the way through the pages and the leather on the outside. It's got a 100-year warranty. A 100-year warranty for against materials and workmanship defects, such that if you have a problem with this thing within that 100 years, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest whiskey warrior has confirmed that the information contained within will get you your civics badge in Scouts. Go to Constitution.AmericanPerspective.online and get yours today. Also, don't forget to check out the rest of the IOTC's offerings, books, and so on and so forth. And, you know, pick something up for yourself that you didn't get for Christmas, of course. Anyway, go and check them out today. And, of course, I appreciate them for allowing me to be an affiliate of theirs. It looks like one of my whiskey warriors had a huge tornado pass just a few miles south of them. Wow. And it traveled, the tornado itself traveled about 100 miles in all. That is That is scary stuff, let me tell you. I remember having a couple tornadoes while I was down in Texas for my military service. And yeah, it's kind of scary when you hear that siren go off and you have no idea what the heck and where it's coming from. But anyway. Okay. So there you go. All right. Where am I? Where am I? I am right here. There we go. Okay, so tonight, of course, I am drinking Four Roses, single barrel. Bonnie, if she was here, would have been extremely happy with me for this, because she loves the Four Roses. But I am drinking it out of a brand new glass, folks. Yes, debuting here on the program is the United States flag, Trump 2024 whiskey glass. Look at that, Trump 2024 right there. I got that. I got that for Christmas from my family. It is fantastic. Look at that flag. It's a black flag, and there it is. Right here, and yes, I have stones in the bottom of the glass, as Chevy says. No stones, no whiskey. It's how we roll. So there you go. Good stuff, and I love hearing from all of my whiskey warriors. Three Chevy sent me a cartoon earlier that said something about whiskey is an acquired taste. If you have whiskey is an acquired taste. If you don't like whiskey, acquire some taste, or something along those lines. It is just fantastic. Anyway, so there it is. That's the Trump 2024 glass making its debut here on the program. I picked up that one, this one, and of course I've picked up some other glasses too along the way. So that's this. I've got plenty of an assortment to choose from. All right, folks. Let's go ahead and get into the first segment of the evening, which of course is On This Day in American History. And this is the last On This Day in American History this year. We won't have a new one until next year. I love saying that right at the end of the year. All right. For the On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. It is chock full of all kinds of information, and as you can see, we're down to the bottom of the barrel here when it comes to timing. So here we go. Tonight is December 28th. Therefore, we're going to talk about the meaning of the flag. On December 28th, 1945, Congress made the Pledge of Allegiance the official national pledge to the U.S. flag. By the way, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I think if the story that I saw was true, Biden actually signed a law that now officially makes the bald eagle the United States bird. How could we not have that as our thing? I mean, seriously. Anyway. I guess apparently that's like the one good thing that he's done in his 4-year tenure here. Anyway, back to On This Day in American History. Noted clergyman Henry Ward Beecher reminded us what our flag means. If one asks the meaning of our flag, I say it means just what Concord and Lexington meant. What Bunker Hill meant. It means the whole glorious Revolutionary War. It means all that the Declaration of Independence meant. It means all that the Constitution of our people, organizing for justice, for liberty, for happiness, meant. Under this banner rode Washington and his armies. It waved on the highlands at West Point. This banner streamed in light over the soldiers' heads at Valley Forge. It crossed the waters, rolling with ice at Trenton. Our flag carries American ideas American history, and American feelings. Beginning with the colonies and coming down to our time, in its sacred heraldry, in its glorious insignia, it has gathered and stored chiefly this supreme idea: divine right of liberty in man. Every color means liberty. Every thread means liberty. Every form of star and beam or stripe of light means liberty. Not lawlessness, not license, but organized institutional liberty. Liberty through law and laws for liberty. This American flag was the safeguard of liberty. Not an atom of crown was allowed to go into its insignia. Not a symbol of authority in the ruler was permitted to go into it. It was an ordinance of liberty by the people and for the people. That it meant, that it means, and by the blessing of God, that it shall mean to the end of time. That is today's On This Day in American History. That's fantastic. Yep, the meaning of the American standard, our colors, red, white, and blue, and their configuration, which has been changed over time. Every time we add a new state, it changes stars. But anyway, so yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mentioned that American Eagle, you know, Biden signing that into law. You know, a lot of people think and believe that we actually have a nationalized language, and most people think that our national language is English, and we're all wrong whenever we think that, because we actually don't have a declared national language. Although that may change. I mean, Trump has already kind of made a hint that he might want to try and get that passed. So, yeah, so our national bird got passed, and now it is official, even though unofficially it was the American bald eagle. Now it is official that it is the American bald eagle, signed by Joe Biden. Like I said, the one thing that he may have done that is actually a good thing. The rest of it, yeah, we'll just throw it out. All right, as we get ready for the inauguration on the inauguration day, there's one group of people that apparently are getting a little bit of the shaft. And that's here in Red State. When I get this up, there we go. Here in Red State, the DOJ has been trying to block January 6th defendants from his inauguration. Unfortunately, one got through. So apparently, multiple requests have come from January 6th defendants to attend President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration. However, one, and by the way, the Justice Department has opposed many of them, but one defendant, Eric Peterson, has been granted permission by none other than Judge Tanya Chutkan. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. But anyway, Peterson, who is a military veteran, Kansas City resident, he pleaded guilty to misdemeanors related to the January 6th Capitol breach. He's also been essentially on, let's just call it house arrest. He has been out without bail, you know, out on his own recognizance kind of thing with certain restrictions. One of them being that he can't travel outside of a certain amount of distance. And so going to Washington, D.C. from where he lives would be beyond that particular distance. And so his lawyer, Michael Bellotta, argued that Peterson poses no risk. He noted that he was a military veteran, no prior criminal history. He actually stated there's no reason to believe that Mr. Peterson will be violent or present any danger to the residents of the district if the court grants his request to attend the inaugural event. So he's, as I just said, he's been allowed to remain free without bail until his sentencing. And he couldn't travel to D.C. because of some of the restrictions that came along with that. And it required special approval from the court. Judge Chutkan noted that prosecutors did not file any kind of an opposition to this request. So the decision to allow Peterson to attend comes amid Trump's promises to pardon most of the January 6th defendants, potentially rendering his pending sentencing a moot point. So, as a part of Trump's Person of the Year interview with Time Magazine, Trump said, well, we're going to go back. We're going to go. Sorry, I got to get this right. I got to get these quotes right here. Well, we're going to look at each individual case, and we're going to do it very quickly. And it's going to start in the first hour that I get into office. And a vast majority of them should not be in jail. A vast majority should not be in jail, and they've suffered gravely. Okay? Judge Chutkan actually said that she has often reassured police officers impacted by the events of January 6th that the rule of law still applies. Earlier this month, while sentencing a January 6th defendant to 8 months in prison, Judge Chutkan commented, I'm not sure I can do that very convincingly these days. Yeah. So anyway, the Justice Department, of course, filed strong opposition to other cases, aiming to prevent defendants from attending Trump's inauguration next month. So there you go. So I guess there have been some defendants that wanted to go and got basically denied. But this guy did. So don't be surprised if Donald Trump says something about this gentleman and his in regards to the January 6th defendants. Okay. So remember, I think it was last night, maybe, that I was telling you about Mexico setting up those shelters to 25 or 26 of them to house any deportees from America that were actually Mexican nationals that would get deported. And so the question that, of course, comes across everybody's lips, well, what about the ones that aren't Mexican? Because they straight up claimed that they needed to be, that the people who would reside in those facilities would be Mexican nationals, that there wouldn't be any foreigners allowed. Well, the question comes, of course, follows on to that, is like, well, where are the others going to go? Well, apparently Guatemala is going to step up. Here in the Daily Caller, Guatemala is reportedly open to accepting Central American deportees that are going to be kicked out under Trump. So, Guatemalan government is not opposed to receiving, and this is interesting, their own citizens and other Central Americans that will be deported by the United States, according to several sources that have spoken with Reuters. Such a move would likely be a major boon for the incoming Trump administration, as Nicaragua and a number of other countries have been reluctant to take back their citizens who've been ordered removed from the U.S. A Guatemalan official told Reuters, there has to be a regional response, and we want to be part of the solution. So Trump has promised, of course, to conduct the largest deportation operation in the country's history. However, this pledge could be hindered by a number of logistical hurdles, one of which being that some major sources of illegal immigration are refusing to take their citizens back. Well, that I would like to understand why. And Tommy, I don't know why you're muted on Rumble. I don't know why you would be muted. That's interesting. I will have to look into that when I get a chance. Anyway, yeah. So basically, many of these countries that are, have these illegal aliens that are here in the United States, they are all saying, hey, we're not taking them back. We're not taking them back. Well, looks like Mexico and Guatemala are going to help. Mexico is going to take their people, and Guatemala is going to take anybody from Central America. Of course, that doesn't help necessarily with the Chinese and the Cubans and all the other countries that have flown in through here and flown into here. Speaking of flying in and everything else, well, there's one thing that Joe Biden has also excelled at. Not only has he excelled, oh, hey, real quick, Tommy. 3 Chevy mentions, if you're muted on the Rumble app, try to go to the web page and see if that helps instead of going through the app. Apparently the Rumble app seems to be having some challenges. So there you go. Give that a try. All right. So Joe Biden, Joe trying to break records and things like that. Joe Biden has apparently made homelessness skyrocket under Biden. Yeah. Well, this doesn't really surprise me any, but Town Hall, Hobo Joe, homelessness skyrocketed under Biden. So did illegal border crossings. Anyway, in the piece here, it says, Joe has put this nation through hell. We had a baby formula shortage, part of the general supply chain fiasco that his administration seemed incapable of understanding or fixing. Working families shredded by inflation. The border crisis created a trail of sexual abuse, rape, and murder. We have nearly 500,000 children who are missing. Now, that number is, anyway, likely sold into sex slavery. And the intentional disregard for border security has contributed to another domestic black eye for Joe Biden, rising homelessness. According to the New York Times, homelessness soared to the highest level on record this year. So, hey, Joe's breaking records all across the board. He's breaking all kinds of things. Now, the New York Times says that homelessness is driven by forces that include a surge of migrants seeking asylum, a national housing crisis, the end of pandemic-era measures to protect the needy, the federal government reported on Friday. The number of people experiencing homelessness topped 770,000, an increase of more than 18% over last year, and the largest annual increase since the count began back in 2007. Nearly every category of unhoused people grew, with the rise especially steep among children and people in families. Now, the report, which was released by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, showed that homelessness has risen by a third in the past 2 years. After years of only modest fluctuations, the agency blamed factors such as our worsening national affordable housing crisis, inflation, and the end of certain aid programs from the pandemic. But federal officials on a call with reporters placed special emphasis on the rise in asylum-seeking migrants who overwhelmed the shelter systems where much of the increase occurred. Well, that's essentially the thing. That's the thing. Here, the Biden administration, this in the Daily Caller, partially blames immigration surge for the massive spike in homelessness. So they're not claiming that they did it. They're just claiming the immigration surge. Well, that's what happens when you open up the effing border, Joe. Did you not think that there was going to be an incredible amount of people crossing over the border who had no place to go, no place to live, no money to be able to do anything and get any of those? Yeah, it's just, this is just, I mean, come on, people. So Joe's making records, all right. Not good records. He's making all kinds of bad records. Oh, speaking about that whole thing, in terms of closing up the border and that, the court has ordered Joe Biden's administration to stop selling off the border wall. Not that he wasn't already gonna, do that, but anyway. So yeah. Now, what is this? This in the Daily Caller was even talking about how California itself, that San Francisco plans on busing homeless people out of the city. What? Why? Why would you do that? Why would you send people out of the city when the cities are the ones that have like all of the special programs and everything else because they're funded by Democrats and everything? That just, yeah. Anyway. So, yep. Anyway, Joe. Oh, Joe, God, you know what? I can't wait for him to get out, to get out of office. He is just, oof. Anyway. All right. So I got to talk about this. And the reason that I got to talk about this is because these, and honestly, it's really focused on a few individuals and their sycophant followers who are all jumping on board talking about this because, I mean, let's face it, this is like a last-ditch attempt. Excuse me. This is talking about a last-ditch attempt to try and keep Donald Trump out of office. And believe me, the desperation in these people, you can just smell it on the air. I mean, this is even, realistically, this is even worse than having like a liberal tears tumbler from the Daily Wire. These people are so damn desperate to keep Donald Trump out of office that they are resurrecting, and I've talked about this twice now in the last week, so this will be number 3, with regards to the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. One of those people is this moron. And yes, if you're over on X and you can, go and check out this guy because let me show you who he is. This guy is a complete moron. This is him. He's a Florida expert. Yeah, I don't know what kind of a expert you need to be in Florida, okay? But he claims that he ran for county commission in 2018 in Brevard County. Anyway, he seems to think that he is like some legal savant expert. And so what he's been doing is he's been posting all over the place with regards to this. Here he is again, even though I keep pointing this out to him. And by the way, they've got the hashtag uphold the oath there. But anyway, this guy keeps talking about Trump being disqualified from office, and he reposts other morons who are also saying the same thing, like this guy, Lawrence Tribe. This Lawrence Tribe dude. Look at this. There it is. It's right there. No, let me get that. There he is, Lawrence Tribe, who is another freaking moron. Okay? Just, I don't understand these. I really don't. So, a couple of the arguments that these morons keep making is the fact that Section 3 of Amendment 14 stands by itself. It does not. There is a section called Section 5 that essentially outlines the fact that Congress is the one that has the power and control to enforce via appropriate legislation. Okay? So that means that Congress has to pass legislation. The other argument that these morons keep using is the fact that Colorado has already said, without a doubt, that he violated, that there was an insurrection and that he violated the insurrection. And what they are using, that he violated Section 3. And so what they are using as a backup for that is the fact that basically a backup to that is the fact that the Supreme Court, when looking at the Colorado decision, and by the way, overturned it, which is why Trump was on the ballot. But they claim that the opinion from the Supreme Court does not address the idea of whether or not an insurrection happened or not. And so therefore, they're saying that because the Supreme Court omitted that little tidbit, that means that an insurrection did actually happen. And that the Supreme Court is basically telling Congress, okay, an insurrection happened, you guys need to deal with it. All of that's bunk. It's all bullshit. It totally is. It's complete, utter bullshit. And I'll explain why. So let me get this up. So here is the opinion, okay? This is the published opinion from the Supreme Court themselves for Trump v. Anderson. I gave you the link in the description of this video. You can click on it and go to it yourself. Now, I've highlighted in this particular view, I've highlighted a particular section. Now, let's see if I can get this up. Oh, there it is. Now, Donald Trump put in basically, let me go back and kind of just quickly cover the history of this. There was a lawsuit that was done by a few of the electorate, a few voters who basically all got together and said that Donald Trump could not be on the ballot in Colorado because of the fact that he participated in an insurrection. They took it to court. The court, now keep in mind, there was zero defense of whether or not Donald Trump incited an insurrection or participated in the insurrection. There was not a single shred of evidence brought forth that was allowed by the court. They just basically automatically made the assumption that Donald Trump violated 14th Amendment, Section 3, period. Even the judge in the district court ruled that Donald Trump violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Without Donald Trump being in court and being tried for insurrection, being found guilty of insurrection or not, none of that information was even presented. Okay, there was no defense of that question. The question basically was that if Donald Trump had to be removed because he incited an insurrection. That was the question, that he had to be removed. And the district court person said, I agree with that. Donald Trump appealed. Well, his lawyers appealed. They went to the Colorado State Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed with that decision and said, yeah, he needs to be removed from the ballot. Okay. Well, that appealed up to the United States Supreme Court. So that's where we are right here. So this highlighted portion, it says, we granted former President Trump's petition for certiorari, which is basically the request to be heard, okay, which raised a single question. Did the Colorado Supreme Court err in ordering President Trump excluded from the 2024 presidential primary ballot? Okay, do you see that question? Do you see that question? There was no question. There was nothing. They didn't ask the court, hey, did I participate in an insurrection? So does the 14th even count to me? No. They basically asked if the Colorado Supreme Court made an error in ordering President Trump excluded from the presidential primary ballot. 9-0. 9-0 was the decision. They concluded, the Supreme Court concluded that the Colorado Supreme Court erred in ordering President Trump excluded from the 2024 presidential primary ballot. Okay, so they reversed it. So they answered the question. Now, in the backup, essentially, here's our answer, here's the reasons, okay? And they go through a whole bunch of them, but I've only highlighted a couple of these because they are important in this one. And you have to dig really freaking deep in order to find it. But here, this right here is one of the reasons. So they say shortly after ratification. Now, first of all, they go through this whole thing. I didn't highlight it, but just so you understand the context of the situation, they go through this whole explanation in the fact that the Constitution in the 14th Amendment clearly states as a part of Section 5 that Congress is the only one who has the power to enforce via legislation any of the articles. And you ask a question about it, let me just tell you right here. I'll point it out to you. Whip out my nice little handy-dandy leather-bound U.S. Constitution here to show you. Right here. Section 5. Right here. In this. Okay? Here. I'll even go back so you guys can see this. There it is. Section 5. Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Now, for those of you that may not understand, what that means is Congress is the only one that has the power. And that was the main reason as to why it got overturned, because Colorado is a state court and a state does not have the power to enforce this. But here's the difference. And this is why I'm saying none of these idiots that are out here talking about this, they don't even understand. There is already an enforcement provision as a part of our laws. Okay, so here, let's read this this part of that I've got highlighted here. So they go into, and this is the Supreme Court. This is part of the Supreme Court opinion. They go into saying, shortly after ratification of the amendment, Congress enacted the Enforcement Act of 1870. That act authorized federal district attorneys to bring civil actions in federal court to remove anyone holding non-legislative office, federal or state, in violation of Section 3, and made holding or attempting to hold office in violation of Section 3 a federal crime. And they list some of the statutes that are part of it. Now, they continue. In the years following ratification, the House and Senate exercised their unique powers under Article 1 to adjudicate challenges contending that a certain prospective or sitting members could not take or retain their seats due to Section 3. Okay? And then they give a few more talking about precedents in the House of Representatives. Now, they also add to this and the Confiscation Act of 1862, which predated Section 3. So they're even claiming that there was a law in the books that predated the ratification of the 14th Amendment. And they basically say that effectively provided an additional procedure for enforcing disqualification. That law made engaging in insurrection or rebellion, among other acts, a federal crime punishable by the disqualification from holding office under the United States. And they give the statute. Now, this is the key point. So they basically are saying, hey, here's the statutes that have been passed by Congress that require or are a part of enforcement of this Section 3. Okay, because remember, Section 3 says these things. Section 5 says Congress shall enforce this through legislation. So they called out 2 of 3 legislation pieces that would fall into enforcing Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Right here is the key point. A successor to those provisions remains on the books today. And they literally call out, and I've talked about this on the program the last couple of nights, 18 United States Code, Section 2383, which no one, literally 0 people, in reference to January 6th, have been tried, charged, convicted of, even remotely had the numbers sniffing close to their cases. Not a single one. So in essence, what the Supreme Court is basically saying is that, hey, these are the laws that were already passed before by Congress that would enforce this. Now, they continue a little bit further down, and they talk about this part, which says, literally, and this is what they're telling Congress, any congressional legislation enforcing Section 3 must, like the Enforcement Act of 1870 and 18 U.S.C. 2383, reflect congruence and proportionality between preventing or remedying that conduct and the means adopted to that end. And they cite a Supreme Court case, an earlier Supreme Court case, that talks about this. Now, here's what they... And this is the other part that these morons don't seem to understand. Here, the Supreme Court also states, neither we nor the respondents, meaning the people who are the defendants in the case, okay, are aware of any other legislation by Congress to enforce Section 3. So in other words, the Enforcement Act of 1870, which is now defunct, the other one, and I can't remember right off the top of my head, it would be the Confiscation Act of 1862, which is now defunct. So that means there is only one singular legislation on the books right now that would enforce this, which is essentially 18 United States Code 2383, which, again, no one has been charged with. Not a single one of the January 6ers, not even Donald Trump himself through Jackass Smith's court cases. Not one hint, sniff, iota, nothing. The Supreme Court is essentially pointing out clearly that unless a person is charged under 18 U.S.C. 2383, it doesn't count. And the only question that was on the docket for these people was clearly whether or not the state could override the federal government when coming for this provision. Now, you can make arguments. I mean, they're and here, I'll show you. Here it is. 18 U.S. Code 2383. This is it right here. And you know what the punishment is? Here's the punishment. Shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So there's your enforcement right there. U.S. Code, Title 18, U.S. Code 2383. Because nobody has even been, again, charged, convicted, or tried for this particular code. There is absolutely nothing else that Congress can necessarily do right now unless they rewrite this particular article and try to make it apply, or this particular U.S. code and try to make it apply to Donald Trump, which I guarantee you is not going to happen in the 20 days that we have left. So all of you morons out there, and yes, I'm calling all of you morons, for all of you morons out there, even the legalese morons, okay? It's not going to happen. Give it up. Your president will be Donald Trump, January 20th at noon, 2025. And I am so sick and tired of these people. They won't take no for an answer. Now, what's interesting, honestly, what is really interesting is I've had a few people go back and forth with me, but not the original posters. Because the people that I've gone back and forth with are sitting there trying to claim that Colorado has the authority in order to do this. They don't. They never have. They never will. It's written right there under Section 5. And it's not as though Section 3 stands by itself, because it doesn't. The enforcement is done in Section 5. That's the whole thing. That is the entire key piece, which, again, Congress has already passed multiple legislations, but the only one that is currently in effect is 18 United States Code 2383, which nobody has been charged with, convicted of, or even remotely tried for at all. That's it. Okay. I've said way too, I've spent way too much time on this already, but there's just no way. The people are completely idiotic, moronic, stupid, whatever you want to call it. They're done. Okay? They're done. All right. Let me take a second. I'll tell you about these wonderful shirts that I wear. I wear them often on the program. I won't say all of the time, but I wear them often on the program. They come from theflagshirt.com. That is theflagshirt.com. These, the ones that I always wear, they are the cotton men's polos. I love them. Go and check them out. They've got these great patriotic styles. Right now, I am wearing the We the People Lincoln version. So here we have the Liberty Bell on my shoulder right here, and then down a little further, which I can't bring it up because I can't stand that high. But Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial is imaged on this wonderful thing. Wonderful shirt. Go and check them out at theflagshirt.com. They've got all kinds of styles for women, men, children, accessories. They got them all. They've got all kinds of stuff. Go and check it out. Theflagshirt.com. And you can get free shipping if you order $75 or more of their product. They always have that. Free shipping. For anything $75 or more, they will give you free shipping. But I know people can't always order, or don't want to always order, $75 of gear at theflagshirt.com. So, that being said, I'm going to help you out. How do I do that? Well, if you head on over to flagshirt.americanperspective.online, that's flagshirt.americanperspective.online, you can get yourself a coupon code that you can copy and paste into the promo code box at checkout at theflagshirt.com and get yourself $5 off that order. Go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online, grab that coupon code, paste it in the box, the promo code box at checkout at theflagshirt.com and get yourself $5 off your order. Go to theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized. Yeah, I'm getting so tired of this. Anyway, all right. So, just to get on this whole, move into this Reagan thing, there's a lot of similarities between what was happening at the end of the 1970s and what is happening after Joe Biden's 4 years in office. There's a lot of commonalities between the Carter administration and what he was having to deal with and the Biden administration. Carter, don't get me wrong, is a nice guy, great guy, sucked as a president. He's horrible as a president. In this particular case, Biden is a horrible, corrupt, incestuous, pedophile, whatever you want to call him. He was a horrible president and a horrible man. So outside of that, there's no comparison. But the economic situation that we're in with high inflation, the desires and the push for all kinds of things, legislating outside of the Constitution. In Carter, he created the Department of Education out of thin air. Here Biden has been, trying to rule us with the pen by doing all kinds of unconstitutional things like forgiving student loans and so on and so forth. But anyway, one of the things that I think is great is we have to look back into history, and we have to look back upon history in order to learn about history to prevent repeating history. Okay. And one of the great things that I think is awesome, especially from like the 1965 on forward, and even before that, is we have these archives of special individuals who essentially have already kind of talked about and have got wise words for us here in today. One of those people is, of course, Ronald Reagan. Now, I want to make something clear to you about this. These clips, all of these clips that I'm about to show you and discuss, have all been taken from the same late night talk show, the king of the late night talk shows at the time, which was the Johnny Carson show. And Johnny Carson, just for reference for those who may not understand, Johnny Carson was a comedy show. But when Ronald Reagan went on in 1975, which is where all of these clips come from, he had a relatively serious conversation with Johnny Carson with regards to a lot of different topics. Now, keep in mind, this is prior to him running for president, because he didn't run for president until 1979, but he was gearing up for that run in 1975, and he had several clear, good things to say about what he planned on doing as president when he ran in 1979 and won in 1980. So first, let's start off with the first clip. And the first clip here, he is talking about taxes. And in particular about these taxes, he is referencing the hidden taxes that a lot of people, even today, because if you look at anybody from Elizabeth Warren, any of the Democrat Party, even with Bernie Sanders, they all are talking about taxes on corporations, make the rich pay their fair share, make the corporations pay, let's tax the corporations. So I felt that it would be apropos for us to listen to Ronald Reagan talking about corporate taxes. Now, for those of you who are students of history, you'll know that Ronald Reagan brought down the corporate tax rate. And by doing so, he actually increased revenues at the IRS. There's a reason for that. Because people start spending money when they are no longer taxed, nor are they regulated, which are two things that Ronald Reagan wanted to get done in his presidency. So let's take a listen to Ronald Reagan on taxes.
When you and I were boys back in the Midwest,
Right.
governments, federal, state, and local, were only taking about 15 cents out of every dollar earned. Today, they're taking almost half of every dollar earned in the United States. And most people don't realize it because the taxes are hidden in the so-called business taxes. You know, the politician that stands up and yells, oh, let's save the little man, let's tax business, and everybody yells hooray. But they haven't figured out that every tax on business is just a part of the cost of production. And the customer winds up paying it when he buys the product. It's a hidden sales tax. There's 116 of them in the suit of clothes that each one of us is wearing.
So, here's the thing. And Reagan pointed it out at the very end. People don't seem to get this. Corporate taxes. The reason why corporate taxes are not a tax on the corporations is just from what Ronald Reagan said. And I've been telling you guys about it just about every single economic segment that I do. COGS, the cost of goods and services. Those taxes that are being levied against the corporations are immediately passed on as a cost of doing business. Ronald Reagan was right. Back in 1975. He called it, and I'm telling you, that is still true today. Now, I got to admit, this next clip, I'm not exactly sure what the topic is, but I will talk about what the topic is here, or I'll give you my comments here in just a minute with regards to this, but I believe it's another piece on taxes. So let's listen.
We ought to have tax reform, and we ought to start by making it so simple that you don't have to hire a lawyer to find out how much you owe every year.
That's for sure. It used to be a little simplified, but not anymore.
Johnny, we live in the only country in the world where it takes more brains to figure out your income tax than it does to earn the income.
Maybe you're right.
So what Ronald Reagan was saying there, which of course a lot of people are saying, I mean, have you ever looked at the tax code? I mean, it's got thousands of lines in the tax code, okay? We can simplify all of this, all right? We can simplify all of this stuff by getting rid of a lot of the just the laws and the lawyers and the legalese. I mean, make it really simple. Make it very simple. Like 3 Chevy points out. He says it sounds like the fair tax. Well, there's a fair tax, a flat tax. There's a bunch of different proposals out there. But if you really and truly want a clear-cut, crystal clear-cut tax system, you need to get rid of all of this stuff. Now, I failed to mention with the first clip where Ronald Reagan was talking about nearly 50 cents of every dollar was going to taxes. That is at the time that he was coming in to being president before he lowered the tax rates across the board. Nowadays, you're looking at somewhere between 30 to 40 cents of every dollar is actually going, quote unquote, to taxes. But it kind of depends on how that is broken out and how that is figured. You also have to understand, not only do you have federal taxes, but you have property taxes, you have sales taxes, you have taxes on the goods and services that are imported into this country. You have all kinds of different things that is going on, okay? And these taxes, a lot of them, like I said, are hidden. Because they are hidden to the consumer is like, hey, this is fantastic. Let's go ahead and do this. Well, that's not always the case. That's not always the case. And we need to pay attention. We need to start paying attention. You want to simplify government. You want to make it easy for everybody to understand. You need to simplify things. One of the biggest things that we could simplify is the tax code. Yeah, I'm okay with paying taxes. I am perfectly fine with paying taxes for necessary items. What I'm not okay with is paying taxes and having my money get spent on all kinds of government programs and government special things. Like there was one clip, I didn't include it, but there was one clip where Ronald Reagan talks about a study that took place that basically figured out that young people were happier than old people, that people making more money were happier than people not making a lot of money, and sick people were less happy than healthy people. It's stuff like this. And granted, that seems like it's but that is exactly what our government does spend money on. They spend money on a bunch of crap. They grant money for things like that. And you can listen to it. Even today, there are several grants and loans that go out from the federal government that none of it should be funded, constitutionally speaking, because it's not part of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. However, all of that, again, these are studies that the government funds. Like, for an example, and we've talked about it just in the last couple of days. Okay, they hand out money for basically crazy crap that should be logical to anybody. That yes, young people, rich people, and healthy people are going to be a lot more happier than sick people, poor people, and aging people. I mean, that just seems like, pretty much common sense to me. G over on Rumble points out, what about the blank check for Ukraine? Well, that's another one. We don't have anywhere in our Constitution that says that we need to be sending money across the world for whatever purposes. That has nothing to do with what American taxpayers are supposed to be funding. We don't fund that stuff. We're not supposed to. That's not a function of government. Now, if we want to, as Americans, want to put together a, let's say like a 501c3 nonprofit and people donate, that's entirely up to the American people. But that's not what federal taxes are supposed to go to. Federal taxes are supposed to keep the doors open on government. That's it. Do the minimal functions of government. That is all that our taxes are supposed to go to. So let's go ahead and take a listen to clip number 3 here. And let's see what Ronald Reagan says with regards to this.
We've gotten in the habit over the last 40 years of thinking the government has the answers. There's very little that government can do as efficiently and as economically as the people can do themselves. And if government would shut the doors and sneak away for about 3 weeks, we'd never miss them.
And that is so true. How many times have we been hearing about government fraud? Case in point, the PPP loans that many people didn't even bother paying back after COVID. Okay, how many times have we had fraud? I mean, fraud is rampant throughout the Social Security, the Medicare, the Medicaid, all of those different other government programs. There's no accountability. Even today, sending money over to Ukraine, somebody is like, hey, you know what? We should be backing up Ukraine with government money. Okay, fine. But they won't even audit what got sent over there. They don't even know where all of it went. They have literally zero accountability for it. Fraud is rampant, even with our food stamps. There are so many people who have committed fraud on food stamps. That's it. Oh, 3 Chevy. Nice tie-in. Do you remember that article that I mentioned a couple days ago? We're paying rent on government buildings that are 95% empty because people aren't showing up. People in the government aren't showing up for work. And you wonder why Doge is such a hit with the American people. All right, we've got another clip from a Ronald Reagan here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what Ronnie has to say about this.
Our biggest problem is that we have built a permanent structure of government, federal, state, and local, the permanent employees, and they've come to the place that they actually determine policy in this country more than does the Congress of the United States. Mm-hmm. There are 14.5 million public employees in the United States. That's quite a voting bloc.
That by itself is unconstitutional. That by itself. Congress is the one who is supposed to legislate. The president, or the executive branch, which, by the way, the president is the executive branch, is supposed to enforce the laws that Congress creates. What Ronald Reagan is pointing out there, which he actually, I think it carries over into my next clip, but what Ronald Reagan is pointing out there is that we have created what is essentially a bureaucracy. This bureaucracy is allowed to essentially run rampant, do all kinds of things to the American people, and yet have no accountability to the American people, which is the idea of the accountability of being voted out of office after you've, shall we say, worn out your welcome. Okay? But he is also talking about a very large voting bloc, which is essentially all of these government bureaucrats that are being paid essentially on a daily basis and are running government. You wonder, people ask the question, Joe Biden hasn't been sentient since the minute that he stepped into office, because we know from the Wall Street Journal that he was having cognitive issues back in April of 2021. For those that don't count, he was inaugurated January of 2021. January 20th of 2021, to be exact. And yet, the government ran on. And how is that even possible? Pretty simple. We have succumbed to the idea that government itself can run itself. This is not what the founders intended. The founders intended for the legislature, meaning Congress, to do the job of Congress to create the laws, and then for the executive branch, the presidency, to enforce the laws that Congress created. Not for Congress to create a vague law, pass it over to the presidency, and the presidency and all of the government agencies that have been created since the beginning of essentially time here, all of these agencies that have been created in order for them to interpret laws and create laws. That's the problem. That is one of our major issues. We have allowed the government, the federal government, to grow outside of its constitutional boundaries. And this is the main problem. This is one of the things that I keep, essentially the message that I keep saying out on this platform is essentially the same. We've got to get government back within its constitutional boundaries. And I'm talking federal government. State governments, if you're in a state and your state wants to do things like abortion and wants to do health care and wants to do Social Security and wants to do all of that, fantastic. That's the states. None of those things are a responsibility of the very limited, in both power and scope, of the federal government in the Constitution. If you want the federal government to be in charge of those things, bad idea. But if you want to have the federal government take all of that over, then create a constitutional amendment and get it passed by 2/3 of each House of Congress and 3/4 of the states. If you want Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and Department of Education and all of these other things, then make them a constitutional amendment and pass that high bar hurdle that our founders created in order to create the federal government's responsibility in those areas. Right now, we have come under the idea that the bureaucracy is what is in control. And this is wrong. That is not what the founders intended. That is not what the Constitution states. This is part of the reason why I keep talking about the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment clearly states if it's not in the Constitution as a responsibility of federal government, nor does the Constitution itself prohibit it to the states. By the way, Section 5 prohibits the 14th Amendment being the responsibility of the states. Just saying. Anyway, if it doesn't prohibit it as a responsibility of the states, then it belongs to the states and the people. Now, we've got one more clip on tap here, and this one kind of ties into what I was just talking about. This one's a little bit longer. It's about 30 seconds long, so let's go ahead and take a listen.
The Office of Management and Budget in Washington, that's responsible for the budget, putting the budget together, cannot even tell you how many boards, commissions, agencies, bureaus, and departments there are in the federal government. Yeah. But all of them can pass regulations, and those regulations have the force of law. And the difference is, when you break the law, you're innocent until proven guilty. When you break a regulation, the fellow that charges you with breaking the regulation, you're guilty. Right. And if you want to take him to court and prove you're innocent, that's up to you.
Now, there's two key points that Reagan brought up in that. First of all, the fact that the government doesn't even know how big the government actually is. They're paying for all of this. Now, keep in mind, this is part of the reason why we have Doge. Doge is supposed to go through and evaluate all of this and figure out what is here and what is not. And as I've pointed out before, the Paul Engel, the writer of the Constitution Study book, I've shown it to you on the program, he basically was saying that we have nearly 500 departments, committees, whatever, and of those 500, only 10%, less than 10%, about 49 of them, okay, are actually assigned to something within the Constitution. Again, back to Article 1, Section 8. Folks, we have allowed through history the growth of the government through special programs, special funding. The majority of them, honestly, have been Democrats who have expanded the federal government. Woodrow Wilson wanted to expand the federal government. He pushed to allow bureaucracies to basically run it. In his mind, the presidency ran the government, not Congress. FDR expanded so much during his 8 year, or no, sorry, he did 4 terms, so 16 years of government. It's the Democrats who keep expanding government and stomping all over the Constitution. It's time for us to get back to our constitutional roots. And this is an example, and this is exactly what Ronald Reagan was pushing for. This is what Ronald Reagan was talking about. This is what Ronald Reagan stood for. Unfortunately, he had, for the most part, a Democrat Congress, which kind of screwed him in the end with regards to all of this. But now we have the rare opportunity, and Donald Trump has the rare opportunity, even though it is a slim margin in the House of Representatives and a not quite so slim margin in the Senate. We have an opportunity that hasn't been seen in history for quite some time, which is the fact that both the legislative branch and the executive branch are tied together in terms of being the same party. This is an important point, and one which must be handled not only with care, but also with extreme prejudice against things that are setting up our government to be much larger than what it intended on being. We need to cut our government back severely. I say judicious use of the 10th Amendment should be on the top of the docket. That is exactly what needs to happen. Okay? So, all of that being the case, we have to go back and take a look at history. Ronald Reagan knew what had to be done. And he got quite a few things pushed that set us up, believe it or not, for close to 40 years of prosperity. Up until, basically, Obama kind of screwed all of it up. And then we had Trump for 4 years, who was trying to correct the ship. And then we ended up with Biden, who was even worse than Obama, because Obama actually had a little bit of, let's just say, sanity in the fact that he didn't want to go too extreme too quickly. He was extreme, don't get me wrong, but he didn't go all the way to the left like Joe Biden did. Because Joe Biden was under the false assumption that going left was where everybody wanted us to go. I am hoping and praying for 2025, starting January 20th at noon, that Donald Trump actually does what he says he's going to do, which there's no reason why we should believe otherwise at this point. And he should go in and start cutting these people, cutting the budgets, cutting the departments, getting rid of all kinds of different committees, departments, department heads, so on and so forth, and just needs to cut back government completely. And if it has to be done through spending, so be it. Take all of that out. 10th Amendment, judicious use of the 10th Amendment is on the docket. Very well should be. Now, I want to point out another fallacy, and this ties into what Reagan was talking about in terms of how much spending there actually is. One of the things that the Democrats keep wanting to float by us is the fact that, the rich don't pay their fair share. And that is a whole bunch of bunk. I always see it with Elizabeth Warren. I always see it with Bernie Sanders. I always see it even with Kamala Harris on social media. So I decided to take a quick look. Now, granted, this is income tax data that has been compiled. Now, they only have it coming through 2020. Obviously, we're in 2024, but still up to a 2023 update. So here's some information that is in regards to what people have been paying. Now here, this is from the Tax Foundation. You can see that in 2020, taxpayers filed 157.5 million tax returns, reportedly earning nearly 12.5 trillion in adjusted gross income and paying 1.7 trillion in individual income taxes. Yeah. So take a look at that. 1.7 trillion in individual income taxes. Here, let me zoom that in a little bit. 1.7 trillion. Do you think that's going to make a dent in the 36 trillion plus that we have if we don't stop in terms of our debt, if we don't stop spending? So now here's another lie that they've been talking about. And one of those lies has to deal with how much the rich pay. Here it is. The average income rate in 2020 was 13.6%. The top 1% of taxpayers paid a almost 26% average rate, more than 8 times higher than the 3.1% average rate paid by the bottom half. That's the bottom 50%. Folks, our problem is not the rich. Our problem is spending. Our problem is the fact that our government and our Congress in particular seems to think that they have a blank check to do whatever they want with the money that they bring in. Totally and inexcusably ignoring the Constitution in terms of what they have available. Now, the top 1%'s income share rose from 20.1% in 2019 up to 22.2% in 2020. And its share of the federal income taxes paid, and this is key, the share that's for the entire bill, 38.8% up to 42.3%. They pay a large portion of the bill, and that's just the top 1%. When you talk about the top 50%, this includes everyone from basically the middle class all the way up, okay? The top 50% of all taxpayers paid 97.7% of all the federal individual income taxes, while the bottom 50, meaning from half, the bottom half only paid 2.3% of the total bill. Rich don't pay their fair share? Yes, they do. They pay almost the entire tax bill here, folks. And if you think that they're going to sit around, especially the top 1%, the top 5%, the top 10%, the top 15%, if you think they're going to sit around and have all of their earnings and income stolen from them, basically, by the federal government under the Democrat plan, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. That's not going to happen. Yeah, you want this in a graph? Let me show you right here. Here it is. Here's the graph. High income taxpayers paid the highest average income tax rates. Take a look at this. The top 1%, again, 26%. The 5% and above paid an additional, or the 5% to 1%, I should say, paid an additional 17.5%. From the top 10% to the top 5%, paid 13.1%. Then you had the top 25 to top 10, paid 9.5%. The top 50 to 25% paid 6.5%, and the bottom 50, that means the bottom half of everybody, only paid 3.1%. So that is taxpayers, by the way, making under $42,184 as an average income. So, yeah. And again, the highest income taxpayers, here's a graphic. Half of the taxpayers paid almost 100% of federal income taxes. So don't sit here and tell me that we're not taxing the rich enough. Don't sit here and tell me that we're not taxing people's income enough. Yeah. And again, as I point out, as Ronald Reagan pointed out, when you go and tax a corporation, all the corporation is doing is passing that along to its consumers. They don't actually pay it. Get rid of the corporate income tax. Get rid of those, okay? Or, I mean, again, bring it down to like 15%, whatever it is, all right? But cut it back, and you'll start seeing prices start to drop again. You'll start seeing the amount of money that is being spent by consumers raise. It's these kinds of things that will help get our economy back on track. And that's what the Democrats don't know about. The Democrats don't understand these things. All righty, folks. That is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free to have one. Once you are there and signed up and signed in, search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button, and also make sure that little bell is there so that you can get notified every time I go live. Also, too, Don't forget to hit those thumbs up buttons across the board, whether you're on Facebook, X, YouTube, and of course the aforementioned Rumble, to make sure that you can help elevate my videos and this channel across all of those outlets for more exposure to everybody. I do appreciate every single one of all of my Whiskey Warrior P1s that are out there. We will see you Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time for the 500th episode. That's right, 500. I've been transmitting for 500 videos. That is just, I can't even imagine it. But anyway, I'm hoping to have something special for you for that 500th episode. Have a great rest of your weekend. And we will see you Monday again, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.